Welcome into another edition of the Hang Time Podcast. I'm your host, Sekou Smith, here in Atlanta, coming to you on a somber day in the wake of the passing of NBA legend Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, and 7 other people in a helicopter crash in Calabasas, California on Sunday. In an effort to make sure we keep things in perspective, I wanted to have a conversation with a couple of my oldest and best friends who cover the league and who have had experiences with Kobe that few others have. Mark Spears of ESPN's The Undefeated and Michael Lee of The Athletic join me on a very special and as I mentioned, somber edition of the Hang Time Podcast, talking about Kobe Bryant, his life and times, 41 years on this earth that we got a chance to really experience, one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen and one of the truly special people. So I hope you take something away from it, and I hope you enjoy it, and make sure you understand that we're sending our prayers and thoughts and our condolences to all of the families affected. So we're here, 2 of my favorite guys, my oldest friends in the league, 2 guys I would have talked to when something, gut-wrenching happens in general. I would have talked to them offline. So I definitely want to talk to him here on the Hang Time Podcast. Mark Spears of ESPN's The Undefeated, Michael Lee of Yahoo Sports, formerly, but now of The Athletic. I know y'all have kept up with them over the years throughout their careers. Fellas, I thought about both of you when the news came down Sunday about Kobe Bryant and the 8 other people that perished in that helicopter crash in Calabasas, California. Mark, I called you, and you answered the phone and freaked me out because when I called you, before you said hello, before you said anything, you said, "Is it true?" And as soon as you said that, I knew. I was like, "Oh no, it must be true." I was like, "This must be real."
Yeah. Man, I was in such a fog. I don't even remember that conversation, bro.
Yeah, I mean. But just the gravity of it, like, dude, when that hit, where were you at? Where were you at, Mike? Where were you at when you heard it?
I was just, I actually was in the midst of feeding my son lunch, and I just went and checked my phone because it was buzzing, and I was like, "What's happening?" And then I was like, "What? No way!" Because I was just in Philadelphia the night before. I mean, I'm in Philadelphia now, but I was at the game the night before when LeBron passed Kobe for 3rd all-time scoring list, and I just written a column because I got a chance to talk to Allen Iverson about it, and he was talking about just the GOAT and how he put Kobe in that mix, with LeBron and MJ, and saying it's a coin flip, and he was just telling me a great story, about how he admired LeBron. And so I just written a column, and LeBron had just shared all these, tales about his experience with Kobe Bryant and what it meant for him to pass him. And so we had just written just spent this time with LeBron, kind of going about Kobe and just to see the next day, not even 24 hours from having that conversation with LeBron to all of a sudden seeing that Kobe's gone. And I was just like, this has got to be a joke. There's no way this is real. And I kept waiting for something to refute it. I kept waiting for something to say that it wasn't true. And I just kept scrolling and waiting on my Twitter feed. And I was like, I'm just waiting on some confirmation that this isn't true. And then I kept getting more confirmations that it was true. And then I just kind of sat there frozen. And I just didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do because it just didn't feel real. And even now I'm still kind of struggling with it because, this is somebody that since I've been covering the league, he's had a presence and he's always been there, and it's just weird that he's gone and it just doesn't feel real.
Yeah, I guess for me, it was like you switch your. I didn't give myself a chance to grieve at that moment because, first I started getting a text about the TMZ report, and TMZ's at a play. If TMZ's in LA with a story, I believe it. when I saw that they came out with it, I'm like, yeah, it's probably true. So in the midst of, and I met Kobe when he was a rookie in '96, and got closer to him after I started covering NBA in '99. Had a lot of good personal moments with him, but I get a call from my editor Matt Wong, who I preface by saying is doing his job, and you guys understand this. I mean, I'm like, this is our business, and so as I'm trying to process what I believed tragically happened, but it's yet to be confirmed. Like, he's calling me, asking me, am I prepared to write? Which is, is horrible, but as you guys know, it's our job, man. Like,
yeah.
And what made it different is there have been, legends, basketball giants that, we've all written about when they've passed, but typically they're, elderly. They're not this young. We saw them as kids, watching them on TV, or even were before that time, not somebody we, broke bread with, spent time with, joke with, laugh with, got cursed at by. It's never been like that. So I think I just almost got hidden in trying to write this column, and so it probably took me about 6-7 hours to write it. And I have to give my boy Michael Eves off, and his family to us too. Like him and Zubin, they did a wonderful job, and under horrible circumstances. And I'm watching, I got ESPN in the background, ESPN on, watching Michael talk about this for 3 hours, knowing personally that he knows him too. So I think the first day was just sombering, but adrenaline, because you had to get switch your mind to do your job. And then Monday, that's when it really, really the reality of it hit, and it got to the point where I didn't want to go on my phone. I didn't want to turn on the TV, my wife is showing me stuff and I asked her not to, I just, it's different, for us, because, there's levels of knowing Kobe, obviously, my condolences to, I can't even fathom what his wife and his family is going through, but, there's so many different levels of people that knew him, because he was so great at making people connect to him like no other. Like, I would see him, he would get scouting reports for people he would meet after game, as stars do, because they're always meeting somebody. Like, he was like the opposing shooting guard, man. He'd come out and know about them, and if they were nervous, by the time they were finished, they felt like they met a new friend. So he just connected with so many people worldwide, people that met him for 2 minutes, people that had time with him like we did, people like, stars, family, that there's so many millions of people that he connected with. But for the people that actually knew him like we did, it's just surreal. It was too much. It was a nightmare. I knew it wasn't going to go away, but it kind of hit me Monday for sure.
Yeah. It's tough for me. We're fathers, husbands, brothers, sons, whatever, first. And my wife and I were driving home from visiting our kids in college. Our oldest two are in college. So we had spent the day before eating dinner with the kids and their friends, making jokes, and just enjoying them for a hot second, just a quick drive-by visit, just to check on them. And so I got the word on the ride home. My phone, I'm in the passenger seat, trying to catch a little cat nap while my wife is driving. Thank goodness, because I'm horrible driving past an hour, and my phone started going off, and she's like, "Your phone." She like kind of woke me up. She's like, "Your phone's somebody's texting you," and I like picked it up, and the first text I saw was from a friend of mine who I had just sat next to at a college basketball game the night before. We had sat and talked throughout the whole game, and he was like, "Please tell me this news is about Kobe. It's not true." And I was like, "News about Kobe?" So I looked in my phone and I leaned my head back, and the first thing I thought was, "Oh, this can't be good." So I looked it up, saw the TMZ report, and was just shocked. And like I said, I think I dialed you. You was the first number I called, Mark. Because I'm thinking if something has happened in our world, NBA world, you, Mike Wells, Art, y'all would be the first people I call, just on a personal level.
Yeah.
And
man, but I didn't even want to check, man. I didn't even want to text them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you text anybody to check, Mike, like in the NBA office or with the Lakers, but I didn't even have it in me to check, bro.
No, I didn't either. I didn't want to believe it, and even Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. However, I'm still when they have the graphic up 1978 to 2020. I'm still looking at it like, why are they cutting? This man's dead.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I look at it and it's hard, mainly because I know that 41 is not the time to say farewell. I've been thinking the last couple of days, what if my life had been taken from me at that age? What would I have not been able to experience? And I'm not that much older than him, but I think about it now, and I'm fortunate to have a son now, and I can look at him, and I don't know, I want to be here for him. I want to have a chance to see him grow up and have a nice life, and I feel bad that Kobe's children, especially his 6-month-old daughter, she's never going to know him, and the fact that he died with his daughter, and it just to leave behind, so much for Vanessa and everyone else to kind of deal with. I just can't imagine it, because it's just such an unfathomable pain to have to deal with, knowing that, death is real, but also that, there he was powerless. He had the financial means to have a helicopter and fly everywhere he wanted to go. But, he wound up being a victim of his own celebrity in that respect, because nobody else was allowed to even take a helicopter that day because of the fog. But Kobe was given that right because he's Kobe Bryant. And you just think about all these things, and you want to be a protector for your family. You want to do everything in your power to make sure that they're safe and that they're being taken care of. And then you realize that there's some things that just are not in your control because, like I said, I never even contemplated, not having Kobe around at some point, and now that he's gone, it's wow, you really know that it all could be taken from you, and you really can only do so much. But if you call, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, Mark, let me ask you something, and Mike, I'm gonna ask you the same. So many people reach out to me, just because they know I have covered the league for all these years, they understood what kind of tragedy this was for us, just being people in that NBA ecosystem. Right off the bat, friends of mine that aren't sports fans, but know I work covering the NBA. My oldest sister, who is not a sports fan, but has granddaughters who all play basketball. And when she heard about Kobe and Gigi, his daughter, who died in the helicopter crash, she immediately thought about me. And I'm like, my wife was crying, which I didn't cry because my mother passed away in 2011. That was the last time I shed tears for somebody passing away. It's kind of dried up that part of me. But I was stunned at the reaction of so many people beyond basketball, beyond our environment that we're in all the time. What was the most surprising reaction you got from somebody else, Mark, when they heard about the news and you talked to them?
I don't know if it's surprising, but it was still, beautiful to watch is the world reaction. You know, like there was my friend's reaction, my family reaction. But then, I mean, you know somebody's special when they're honoring you at soccer games in other countries, right. You know, y'all ain't soccer people, but I'm soccer people, so you know I pay attention and stuff. You know, seeing Neymar, seeing that, you know, a match in Italy, or seeing that like a painting is put on a basketball court in the Philippines. You know what I mean? Like the impact that he had globally is just absolutely stunning to me. You know, he was going to, I went to India last year with the Kings and the Pacers, and first time the NBA has ever had, you know, teams there. And Luke Walton, who, you know, coaches the Kings and Kobe's former teammate, was saying, Kobe came here years ago. like we're coming here now, but man, he came here a long time ago. And then they're like, so why did he come? He's like, Kobe said, how many people you know how many people live in India? Like, he was just so like ahead of the game, so out of the box. Like, he was going to China before players were going to China in droves, and going to Europe, and you know, perhaps that was part of his, one of the blessings he had was, I think, you know, spending much of his youth in Italy and seeing our world globally, where much of us, like, shoot, man, I think the only time I went out of the country when I was a kid was went to Tijuana in Vancouver. Like that don't count, you know what I mean? So, I mean, but he just had this global view and this ability to make people like feel like they got to know him and fall in love with him in a way that I've never seen. Like, hey man, our business is to debate to the end of time, but like, I lived in Los Angeles for a couple years. I know the stars of no city in the world has more stars that come in and out of Los Angeles than than LA, you know, entertainers, musicians, athletes. I think he is the greatest entertainer of all time to come through that city, the most beloved one of all time. I've never known them to love anybody more than him in Los Angeles. And that, I'll be in LA on Friday, and I'm, you know, dreading going by Staples because, you know, that whole city is mourning, bro. Like nothing other.
I can't imagine being there for that game.
Yeah.
It's going to be sad. It's going to be like a funeral.
Yeah. But you know what? To the NBA's credit, I'm glad they didn't play on Tuesday, man. That couldn't happen. Like I talked to Phil Handy, one of their assistant coaches, who he was working Gigi out like 2 weeks ago, and also one of the young ladies that passed away too, one of her teammates in the crash, you know, just 2 weeks ago. So, you know, he like pulled over on Monday when we talked, and pulled over and was crying on the side of the freeway. And I was like, yo, and I tweeted it out. I don't know if you guys said it. I'm like, they can't play, man. It's different in Los Angeles, and I don't, you know, I think everybody's like,
it's not even just
Kobe,
the basketball. No,
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead and finish.
No, I mean, that people forget that in LA it's different. He is the favorite son of LA. He's been there since he was 17. People in that franchise have known him for over 20 years. So it was deeper than just the players and the coaching staff. He had people that, like, known him for a long time. I would have been horrible to ask the PR guru Allison Bogley and ask, you know, people that have been in that franchise for a long time, or people like Phil who knew his daughter, you know, asked them to go to work yesterday, man. I'm so glad that they didn't play, and I think Friday certainly is going to be emotional, but I also think because at least a couple days have passed, it will be more celebratory than it would have been last night.
Yeah, I was going to jump in just to say that it's not even just the Lakers staff; it's the Staples Center people, who Kobe touched as well. I mean, it wasn't just people that had purple and gold. It's just the security guard, just the people that were at the arena every day that he showed up. That's who all had to work, and I think that's what. I think the league did a great job in considering everybody involved, not just not just people who wear the uniform, but everybody who has some connection to making sure the game, is played. So I thought it was a beautiful gesture, and I still don't know how, everybody, there is going to move forward because, obviously, basketball always is going to be, the sanctuary for people. It's going to be the place of comfort and peace. But what do you do when, in your place of comfort and peace, every time you look up, you're going to see 8 and 24. You're always going to have a reminder that he's gone and that he's gone way too soon. And I think that's probably going to be the saddest thing, And, Mark, you mentioned a point earlier about how, Kobe had a way of making, you feel special just from coming in contact with him. And I always wonder if that's something that he sort of just developed over time when you consider – he moved to Italy at a young age and was like this young African-American boy in Italy where he had to make connections with people who didn't speak the same language and had to adjust to that. And then, very finally, just immersed himself into basketball and becoming the best, because that's all he had to sort of motivate himself and to keep him going in this strange place. And then, he becomes a teenager and he moves right back to America. And he's in Philadelphia area. And he feels like an outsider there after just going through the experience of being an outsider in Italy and, having to, force himself to sort of make connections with people, new people in another place where he wasn't necessarily initially, accepted. And, when you think about the motivations that he had to be the greatest ever, it was sort of a singular, focus, and it was alienating because he pushed out anybody that wasn't, going to help in that regard and helping him reach that individual goal and try to, reach that purpose. And you just saw that maniacal approach that he had, the competitiveness, the hard work, the drive, all the things that pushed him, that made you respect him, even if you didn't necessarily like him. And he just reached this level of greatness. And I just felt like his last year in the league, it just felt like the most free I ever saw him. It was the most loose and carefree that I ever seen him because he had just had this level of acceptance that he had given all that he could to this game, and you saw the poem, the Dear Basketball poem and all these things. And those things always seemed completely sincere to me because I felt like he had nothing more to chase. There was nothing, no more rings to chase, no more respect to chase, no more any of that. He had done it all. But then he had sort of found that purpose. He sort of figured out that what that success had, what he acquired with that success, having, generations idolizing him and making him their hero and glorifying him because of the success he had on the court. But he had a responsibility that came with that to reach back, to reach down, to help up, younger players, to give them encouraging words, to motivate them during their lowest points. And there's been stories that have been coming out all week, but I knew of some even before they were, discussed, in regards to his death, where he reached back and, helped guys, helped Paul George after he broke his leg. He's one of the first people to reach out after he broke his leg, at the Team USA scrimmage. When Isaiah Thomas, when his sister passed, during the playoffs, Kobe was one of the first people to reach out to him. They didn't really have a relationship, but Kobe reached out, and not only did he try to help him get over the grieving, he actually, watched film with him and broke down game film to get Isaiah Thomas's mind off of, him grieving his sister so he could just focus on basketball. And you could just find just so many guys around the league where Kobe sort of became this big brother or this godfather type figure. And to me, I thought that was sort of a beautiful, start of just his evolution and just what he was becoming. And he had a vision to dominate Hollywood, and he won an Oscar, and he's going to have the Mamba Skills Academy to help players develop and being their best person. And it's like he invested so much energy into his own individual greatness, and then he was like, okay, I'm going to help my daughter. I'm going to invest in her, and I want her to she loves this game, she's passionate about it. I'm going to use every resource I can to make sure that she can excel and be her best person. And I think that's what contributed to all this sadness, is that that this guy who had this indomitable will, this guy who was so determined to be the greatest that, he just looked past it all. He had the audacity to think he could come out of high school to play, in the NBA. He had the audacity to think that he could go to Los Angeles and become a bigger star than Shaq and become so revered he could push Shaq out so he could take over and run L.A. all by himself. I mean, he had all this going for him. So he had this next phase of life, and you knew he was focused on wanting to dominate it. And just not even, 4 years after he retired, he's in this mode, he's in this peaceful place, and he's gone. I'm just like, it's devastating, man. It's really heartbreaking, because I know that in a couple of weeks he's going to be announced as a Hall of Famer. And I had just been telling somebody the night before, like I said, when LeBron passed Kobe, I was like, I can't wait to hear Kobe Bryant's Hall of Fame speech. Because I know he's probably going to be somebody who doesn't necessarily be like, MJ and get up there and just blast everybody from his past. He was going to really move everything forward.
Mike,
Go ahead.
I'm going to interrupt you. And this kind of makes me laugh, too, man. Like, only Kobe could have a goodbye speech that's animated. Right? Like, he's just... like, I went to his the Jersey retirement, and I'm like, this dude just did his speech with animation. Something else, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't even talk. He just like, all right, play the tape, roll the tape. I was like, wow.
On another level.
He might have did that again. He might have like, we got a play that's gonna come out and tell our story. You know what I mean? Like,
I'll have a Broadway musical performance.
He didn't do nothing normal, man. Like he just had a cartoon say goodbye to everybody, man. It's just hopefully, like, that'd be great if they played that. You know what I mean? I don't know who is worthy of speaking for him other than
I don't know.
Perhaps his wife. Who I don't know if she would have. I
don't know who could get through it
to do that, but.
Did you guys see TNT? Jerry West, Shaq, obviously Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, Ernie Johnson, but then also Dwayne Wade, and then Rick Fox and Derek Fisher. Man, I heard a lot of people talk, but then to see his former teammates and and them recount what they went through, what it meant, how it sounded, and y'all have had these conversations. Brian Shaw, all these people who have played with Kobe know him differently than the average person. So y'all have heard some of these stories about how rough he was to deal with at, 17, 18, 19 years old. And then to see the appreciation they have for him as a man. Now, man, I didn't have a hard time until last night watching that.
Yeah, well, he wasn't he was always some tough dude, man. But I was talking to Phil Handy yesterday. Like, one thing about Kobe, he tests you to see kind of how you would respond, and Phil was telling me a story about how he basically took the job as an assistant coach with the Lakers in 2011 because of the opportunity to work with Kobe. And he said he was refereeing one day and he wasn't calling a lot of fouls, and Kobe thought he got fouled every time. And he said Kobe threw a basketball at his head, man, during the practice. And I said, so what'd you do? He said, I got the ball, and I threw it back at him. And I started saying, I'm from Oakland, man. I don't play that. And then he said, Mike Brown told him to calm down and everything. And then so afterwards, he said he was mad, roughing the rest of the scrimmage. And also was thinking, man, Kobe don't like me. I'm trying to figure out my way with this franchise. And he said after practice, Kobe ran up to him, smacked him on the ass, and said, "Hey, man, way to stand up for yourself." You know, and I remember, them having some tough game. I don't know if you guys remember in the Phoenix series.
Oh yeah.
And I call it you got to ask a question where I call it jumping on the grenade, man, where it's not going to be a fun question to ask, but somebody got to ask it. And I remember I asked him something, man. He cursed me out in front of everybody, And, but I was like, hey, if it's a good quote, I'll jump on the grenade. You know what I mean? Like, I'll ask a question. And I always think kind of he respected the fact that even though me and him was cool, that I would, I could ask that question. You know what I mean? Like that I was doing my job, man. It wasn't personal. We got to ask tough questions sometimes. So he just had this unique ability to, there's one thing about wanting to be good, and there's another thing about wanting to be great. We hear kids talk all the time about wanting to play in the NBA, but how many of them are going to show up to the practice arena at 5:45 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning like him to work out? You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason why he was who he was. He worked not just harder than everybody. He worked harder than, like, you should have worked. You know what I mean? He worked more than humanly possible to become special.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said he wanted you to know it, too.
Yeah.
I was going to say this.
He could be cocky because he put the work in. You know what I mean? He knew he was good.
Yeah, he earned it.
Like I would ask y'all, man, like, and I'm talking about like the late 2000, before 2010, like 2008, 2009, 2010. That dude, man, that swag he had when he came on the floor, bro. Like, the only person I thought that wasn't scared of him was Pierce. Everyone else was scared of him, man. And it wasn't like he was some crazy dude. It wasn't like he was Debo, some crazy dude from the hood. He was just so good, man, so in your face, letting you know what the deal was. Like, I'd never been, I mean, we caught Michael Jordan, and Michael, I think you might have seen him in a Wizards uniform a lot more than I did, but yeah, so we saw Jordan at the end. So I saw Jordan play in person once with the Bulls, but never as a reporter. No question, with all due respect to LeBron James and everybody else, Durant and Curry and blah, 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 Kevin Garnett, I'd never seen anybody more competitive than him.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I'm gonna be honest, I hated him, man, when he first entered the league, because I remember when he declared for the draft, and, he was out at his high school, and he had the sunglasses on his head, and I was like, man, who is this clown? Who do you think he is? He's gonna come to the NBA out of high school as a shooting guard? Man, get out of here. Who's this? How arrogant must you be? And then, I was like, man, I wasn't rooting for him to fail, because I was like, I didn't have to. Like, he wasn't going to succeed in the NBA coming out of high school. He was going to be eaten alive. And then, like, I didn't like him, and then, like, there was all this hype around him. He wound up taking Brandy to the prom, and I was like, man, this dude, get this dude out of my TV, man. And then he wound up getting drafted by my favorite team.
Don't forget the rap. Don't forget the rap.
Oh, yeah, the rap, too. Yeah. But then he got drafted by my favorite team. I was a Laker fan, man. I loved the Lakers. Nice. And Eddie Jones was my favorite player at that time. And so I was like, man, I guess I'll tolerate this dude. But I mean, Eddie's my guy. They got Shaq now. I'll ride with him. And then, man, they going to push Eddie out for this dude. And once they traded Eddie Jones, I was done with the Lakers. I ended my fandom of them. I cut them off, and that was the end. And I remember I had a friend at the time was like, man, don't come back when they start winning championships. I was like, oh, I won't. I'm done. They got rid of my boy. I'm done. And it actually worked out to be perfect because, you know, I wanted to cover the NBA. And, you know, at that point, and when I started covering the league, I was out of it. You know, in terms of being a fan, I could just root for the game. I could be a fan of the game as opposed to one team. And so I was like, okay, you know, Kobe kind of helped me in that respect because I was no longer a Lakers fan. But when I started covering the league, I hated him too. Like, I was like, this dude shoots so selfish. He shoots all the doggone time. He won't get a ball to Shaq. Like, oh, he's riding Shaq's coattails to these championships. Then I started covering the league. And then I was like, yo, man, this dude is the real deal. Like, he's better than everybody out here. Like, I saw the separation. I saw, like, you know, like you said, you mentioned the work, but you saw the skill on the court. You saw, you know, the footwork. You saw, like, that, you know, determination to, you know, will his team, you know, and you saw him to go on these scoring flurries that were just, like, deflating and demoralizing. And he would just come in and he would just strike and, like, you know, bury you. And I was witnessing this. Obviously, I was covering, you know, the Hawks then, so he could probably he didn't have to go that hard.
He wanted to, yeah.
But I realized how good he was, and I understood it. I understood, like, all the commentators and everybody, what they were saying about him before I started covering the league, which I wasn't really paying attention to because I was so caught up in not liking him. And then, you know, I started to appreciate him just from what I saw, you know, and the work that he put in. And I'll never forget, you know, the first time I interviewed him, you know, was my first year on the full beat, you know, working at the AJC. And I split it with Jeff Denberg, you know, rest in peace, at the time. And he would always spend extra time in Portland with his son because he lived up there. So we split the West Coast trip. And the Hawks had played the Lakers, and so I convinced the editors to let me stick around a couple of days in L.A., you know, because I was going to get Kobe Bryant. You know, let me stick around for a little bit, see if I can get Kobe. They're like, yeah, go ahead, see what you can do. And I never met him. You know, I had never asked him a question before, but I had sort of said, I'm going to get Kobe because he had been on this rampage where he was dropping 35, 40 a night, like 13 games in a row. He had 13 straight 35-point games. And so I was like, I got to be there for if he's going to keep it going. And the streak ended the night that I showed up. And so I showed up in the locker room, and, like, there's, you know, gang of reporters around him, and I'm just like, I can't even get in here to ask him a question, man. This is whack. So I just started walking back around, pacing, trying to figure out, you know, if I'm going to even be able to get him, because once he's done, he's probably just going to be done and just, you know, blow me off. And I just walked up to him, and I said, hey, man, I'm Michael Lee with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Man, I flew all the way out here to talk to you. And he looked at me, and then I said, you got a minute to talk? And he's like, sure. And we wound up talking for like 5-6 minutes, you know, about the streak, about, you know, him taking on this leadership role with the, you know, with Shaq being down, and just, you know, what it meant for him to be, you know, going out there and doing all this. And he was just giving me these real honest, sincere answers. And, like, as we walked out, I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like, this dude doesn't know me from Adam, and I'm coming here not liking him. And now I like him, you know, just because, you know, he went ahead and gave me this time. And so we're walking out together and just kind of just chit-chatting. And then he kind of pulled away when somebody walked up to him and they gave him this box of Krispy Kreme donuts. And I'll never forget it because I was like, oh, Kobe, I mean, he's such a hard worker. He don't eat Krispy Kreme donuts. But he put the Krispy Kreme donuts right under his arm and walked out. And so I went and grabbed my backpack and grabbed my bag, whatever. And I get ready to walk out to the parking garage to go to drive home and just drive, you know, feel all excited that I got Kobe one-on-one. And so as I'm pulling out, there's this horde of fans still camped out outside the garage at Staples Center, and they're just waiting for Kobe to come out. And so, you know, Kobe pulls up in this huge SUV, and he's at the stoplight, and the crowd, they're just chanting, you know, Kobe, Kobe, Kobe. And they drove off, and I watched Kobe drive off, and, like, I'm looking at the fans, and they're all excited that Kobe acknowledged them. And I was like, yeah, I bet y'all don't know he got a box of Krispy Kremes riding shotgun. But, I mean, I'm sure y'all have y'all favorite, you know, your either your favorite story or your first memory of coming across with him. I love to hear that from y'all.
Yeah.
Well,
Mark, let me tell you something before you go, Mark, because I need to make sure I mention this. I've been around. I've been in scrums, interviewed Kobe for many times. I never had personal interaction with him, like one-on-one type, away from this drama. The first and only really alone time I ever spent with Kobe was with you, Mark. I know you remember this. Was in Salt Lake City during the playoffs. And I don't even remember what year it was.
You were there too? I forgot that you were there.
No, dude, that was
the name of my story.
Yep, dude, that was me, you,
talking about when we went to the
his
bar?
Security guard. Yes. And you was like, let's go. We're going to this spot in downtown.
About that. Tell me what you remember, and I'll tell you what I remember.
Okay, yeah. So you were like, we're going to this. You was like, hey man, we're gonna go eat dinner with Kobe and his security guard. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, okay, Mark, because Mike, you can attest to this. Spears has gotten us into more adventures over the last 2 decades, probably than anybody.
Especially in Salt Lake.
Whether it's Salt Lake City, whether it's driving across the border to Canada and back, I can just think of some of the wild
always
adventures
an adventure, right?
Yeah, and you were like, come on, man, look, we're going down to this spot. We went down there early in the afternoon it was like on a practice day, and there was nobody in the place. It was a 2-floor bar, this restaurant bar in Salt Lake City. Nobody there. Me and Mark, we walked in, sat at the table, and he was like, yeah, they're on their way. So I'm thinking they're going to pull up, in a car or something, you Kobe Bryant, and you in enemy territory during the playoff series. You're not just going to be walking the streets of Salt Lake City, And literally, I looked out the window, and him and the security guard are walking up. Kobe just had on a sweatsuit, like a normal cat. They walked up like 2 dudes, just normal. Walked in, sat out at the table. And, we all, that was the beginning of a night that seemed like it lasts for 12 hours. I don't even remember what time I got back to the room that night. But that was the first time I've been around him without any of the bells and whistles, without PR people, without any of that stuff. And I didn't know him like you did, past tense. I mean, like you did at that time, Mark, and like you did throughout his career. I was not as close to Kobe as you were by any stretch. So that was my first time really being up close and personal with him. And I was taken aback at how hilariously matter-of-fact he was about everything. Like, we talked about everything that night. And the climate in Salt Lake City changed from pleasant, calm evening, weather was good, to by the end of the night, I felt like we was in a movie. Like, they had to put us up in a different part of the bar. They had to block it off with velvet ropes. The restaurant part of the bar went from empty to packed in literally in a blink of an eye. It was like word had got out that Kobe was in this spot. And apparently everybody in Salt Lake City tried to come to this same spot that night. It's fuzzy now because it's been so many years, Mark. I don't even remember what year it was.
Well, no, I think it was 2010, but I'm going to tell you something you forgot, which was hilarious. So, yeah, my buddy, Lassie Mitchell, who went to San Jose State with, he hooked us up with the spot. And, yeah, I remember them, at first, everything was cool, and then, people started tripping that, Bean was there, so they kind of made some, little VIP area as fancy, I guess, as one could make it in Salt Lake City. So just that they had their own people kind of making sure people didn't come by. But there was this woman that kept, heckling them. Because if you go look at that series, so the Lakers won the first 2 games. The Jazz won Game 3 in Utah. So there was some hope for the Jazz that they could compete in the series, right? And so this lady comes up, Kobe, you suck. Jazz going to win the series. They going to upset y'all. It's over, blah, blah, blah. And they were, somebody was trying to, get her to go away. He's like, no, let her keep talking. Let her keep talking. She's, running her mouth and everything. And one of his buddies or one of our friends, and I won't go into detail about that, like thought the lady was, cute and cool, right? And Kobe picked up on it. So he said, so you confident y'all gonna win? He's like, yeah. He said, well, if we win, if we beat y'all, then you got to go to dinner with my homeboy. And she's like, I don't know, da-da-da. He's like, hey, no, you said you're going to win. And if y'all going to win, you ain't got to worry about it. And she's like, all right, I'll go to dinner with him if you guys win. And the Lakers won the next 2 games. And she did end up going to dinner with the dude. So that was just like funny to me. That he's like, go to dinner with him, And then he just was like, it was always too. Like some funny competition, man. But well, like my favorite. What's that?
No, I was gonna say the way that I was just shocked at the way people were coming up to him, talking to him. Yeah, I couldn't get over how. Like, some people was walking right up to us, Mike. Like, walking right up to the little table where we are when they sectioned us off. And, like, going at him. And Kobe was going right back at him, just as vicious. Like, not mean, but, like, if they came up and said something slick, he'd say something just as slick back. Yeah, and it was like, I thought, man, that's why people loved engaging with the dude, because he had no pretense about him. Like, if you came at him sideways, he'd come right back at you sideways.
It was also kind of sad, because I'm like, man, he can't go anywhere, bro. Like I used to like wonder when I first started covering the NBA, like why these dudes got security guards. I understand, man. I definitely understand now. Like you need somebody to be the bad guy or to be the protector. He couldn't. The way people acted towards him, he could have gotten to something every day. You know what I mean? And so no, it was. That was a fun night. That was probably the most fun experience I had with him. But I think the most personal one was after his last game at Golden State. He was in the training room, and he had talked to them. I think he had talked to the media already, but I was trying to get some, time with him. Not even just to interview with him, just to talk to him, catch up with him. Which I tried to do a lot, walking with him on the way out and everything. And he actually, I think it's the first and only time a player has done this, invited me to go into the training room in the Warriors visiting locker room at Oracle. And so I went in there and we talked for a while. And I remember the Spike Lee cameras were on us. And I almost wanted to reach out and see if it could, like, get this footage, but we had about a 10, 15-minute conversation, and he asked me about myself, and I remember Tommy Shepard once told me, he said, if you're waiting for a hug from an NBA player, you're wasting your time. Kobe gave you that hug, man. He, like, literally cared about you more than, any star would most players, it's a one-way street, But with him, like, he could tell something was on my mind about kind of my career at the time. And I'll read this to you guys, because after I got the job at the Undefeated, and it was, I'm not going to go into detail about that conversation, but it was really, like, nice of him to even, like care, you know what I mean? But he sent me an email back. I was telling him that I got the job at the Undefeated, and I'm super excited about it. And, I wanted you to be one of the first people to know because, you were kind of he had talked to me during, when I was trying to figure out my career and everything. And he goes, happy for you, my brother, right from the heart, always hear from you. This was on March 22nd, 2016, man. So, I ain't getting rid of that email, man. No. I'm going to keep that email. One of my friends told me I should frame it, So, I just, for him to, like, send that thing right from the heart, man, that's always going to stick with me.
Yeah. It's. I told somebody people are going to be putting together these thoughts about and these experiences they've had with Kobe for a long time, man. I wanted to make sure I talk. Like I said, I talked to y'all because y'all are two of my best friends. Period. But certainly in the business as well. And I was listening to everybody else's immediate thoughts about Kobe, and like I said, I just kept thinking, y'all are two of the people I know who have had a ton of interactions with him over the years, been around him, seen him, been in his orbit, whatever, and that, and I know we see things differently. We see it through different sets of eyes. I'll never forget being at the London Olympics and being around Team USA every day. And there was a bunch of reporters there covering it, but I was kind of by myself. I didn't have y'all around. That was one of the rare times when we're covering a USAB event, whatever it might be, and I didn't have either one of y'all around. But like that connect, like Kobe was giving everybody the quality time, and I appreciated that he would give me that look, and I think it might have stemmed from that night in Salt Lake City, Mark, because I had been around him before that, remember. And he never really gave me a look. But after that night, every time I ever saw him, he shot me this look like, yeah, you was there. Like, I know you remember that night in Salt Lake City.
But also what's brilliant about it is like he knew all the local beat guys' names. He knew things about them.
Yeah.
He knew all the national people's names. He knew the importance of making time for the national writers. Like, I got him alone after media day, which I knew he had to be exhausted, get him after games, sending him emails and getting him responses. Like, he truly understood better than any athlete I've ever been around the importance of, building a relationship with the media. I mean, I don't know that anybody will ever be as good good about it as him.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories about something like that was I remember I was in LA in '08, the year he won MVP, and I was I think I had a day off or something. I went to Lakers practice. I went to Lakers practice, and Allison was there, and she was like, "What are you looking to do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm hoping I can get Kobe." And she was like, "That might be tough today because he didn't practice." And I was like, "Oh man." She's like, "Yeah, but he's here. He's in the training room. He's getting treatment." And I'll ask him if he wants to do it. And I was like, "Yeah, if you could, that'd be great." And she's like, "Well, if he wants to do it, I'll just signal you to just come to the practice court. I'll just give you a signal because I don't want all the other beat writers to know that he's talking to you today because they know he's not practicing. So just so if I signal you, come on." And I was like, "Okay." So everybody interviews all the other players that they're talking, and I'm like nervously wondering if Kobe's actually going to accept, wanting to do the interview. And then, so everybody else is transcribing all their interviews and like I look over at the door and Allison like gives me a nod. And so I just kind of discreetly like leave out the back door and then I head onto the court. And then so I stand out there and about, a couple seconds later, Kobe pops out. And, he winds up giving me time, and we talk about, his MVP, chase for the MVP. We talked about, I told him how I thought he should have won in '06. And, like, so now everybody thinks you're a better player, and now you got better players around you, and we were laughing about that. He talked about his trade demand and how he had to shake up the trees, to get some things moving, to get Gasol. And it was just great that, like, I was just sitting there like, man, this dude, didn't even practice today. He could have just blown it off and said, I'm off today. And he knew that I was there and that I needed him because I was in town. And he just gave me that moment. And, that stuff like that, that's why, my brother, he actually texted me after, he heard about Kobe's death and was like, how are you holding up? And I was like, it's tough, and I said, he said, well, I knew you knew him pretty well. And I was like, yeah, he was one of my favorites to deal with. And he was like, wow. And he's like, so he texted back. He's like, I know how much you hated him. I was like, yeah, I did back in the day. I said, then I met him and that changed everything. And I said, and just being around him, covering him all these years, I couldn't come away with anything but having positive feelings about him because just being in his presence, I felt good, being in his presence. So that's stuff that I'll take away. And, just the other day, I live out, near his old high school in the Philly area, and I took my son up there just to kind of see like this little vigil they had out there. And my son is like, he doesn't know what's going on. He's just looking at all the teddy bears and stuff they have laid out on the ground. He's excited about that. And I don't know, maybe one day, he'll ask me about my job and what I do and who I was able to be around, and he'll hear about Kobe, ask me, and I feel glad that I'll be able to tell him that I knew him and that I had a great time, covering him.
Yeah, no, I'll leave you with one more story about him. And one guy, man, we all gotta say a prayer for is Nico Harrison, his right hand guy with Nike,
yeah.
man. Nico. I always joke with Nico. I was like the only person I said you might spend more time with Kobe than his own wife. Like he was with Kobe wherever he went, all over the world. And so one time I had this like Adidas sweatsuit on, some Adidas shoes, and I go catch Kobe before he left practice to get an interview with him. He's always cool, and then he's like looking at me like, man, I ain't talking to you. I'm like, why is he tripping? I ain't talking to you, man. I can't believe he did that. I'm like looking at Nico, and Nico's laughing. I'm like, what'd I do? How you gonna wear all that Adidas shit to come try to talk to me? And I was like, oh, man. And he he had that bad breakup with Adidas, and he got all his Nike stuff on. I was like, Adidas out that day, and oh, man. He's like, I ain't talking to you, dude. I ain't talking to you. That's disrespectful, man. So I had to, basically, man, I promise you this won't ever happen again, man. I promise. So, he ended up giving me the interview after he gave me a hard time about, being decked out on some Adidas commercial or something. And from that point on, if I had a one-on-one interview with a player set up, right, or if I was going somewhere and the star, if I'm going to interview Dame Lillard, I got Adidas on. Or if I'm going to interview Steph Curry, I got some Under Armour on. If I go interview Kevin Durant, I got Nikes on. You know what I mean? Because of that incident, I'm like, these dudes, we think they don't pay attention to stuff. Man, they do. You know what I mean? I feel like I got to be respectful to, what they rock with. So if it's Clay and he got a shoe company, I don't even have the shoes, the Antas or whatever he wears.
Antas,
I'll just wear
get them Antas.
Yeah, I ain't got no
you better get your game up on them.
Yeah, I don't know how much time we have with Sekou, but I did want to say one thing about, you mentioned the Olympics. Mark, do you remember how he was a deity in China? How everywhere that he went, nobody cared about LeBron or D Wade?
Oh, no. He was the only athlete that might have been more popular than Yao Ming.
Oh, for sure.
At the Olympics. Right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it was like Jesus had showed up, and come back to play basketball. That and just walking around that arena. Cause they had to remember they had to cut off a whole section when they watched games because fans would just be camped out all around. I'm talking about hundreds of fans would just, stand around that section that they had blocked off just so they could just look at Kobe. The game is going on, but they're crowding around the team to just look at Kobe. And when he moved, they moved where he moved.
And think about the way the people react to him in NBA arenas. I saw literally his last year, grown men wearing head-to-floor Lakers hookups, going to and visiting arenas, going to watch Kobe. This, you talk about a deity in China.
Yeah.
Mike, he was bigger than the royal family in London. I'm telling you.
Yeah, but that's why I don't think he really went to games, because he knew if he went to a game, then the attention was all going to be on him. Especially, I think when LeBron first got there, he didn't. I think his first game was when he got his jersey retired. First time he went to a game, and I only think is because of his daughter Gigi's love for basketball that he was even starting to go to games now. Like, I went to a Hawks game to get, and from the Trae Young diary we're doing, I don't think he would ever want to go see the Hawks play on a Sunday night, right? But Gigi was a big fan of Trae Young. So he was there. And if you see the video of Trae Young, man, just pouring in emotion, crying, mom hugging him, like after that game in L.A., he got time with Kobe, and it was. But Kobe was excited they'd see him because his daughter was a fan of Trae Young's, and they all got time together that Trae really, really cherished, you know. So I think we, you know, if he was still with us, he probably would have been a lot more games because that was something that they truly bonded on, was a game of basketball.
I've chewed up enough of y'all's day, and I know we're going to talk Kobe more before it's all said and done. And I'm looking forward to seeing y'all in a few weeks in Chicago during All-Star Weekend. I know y'all be there. People talk about taking things for granted. That's the one other thing, and we'll close on this. That's the one other thing about the sudden nature of you know, that incident and the passing of those 9 people that's really hit home is just, you don't tell you know, the people you care about, the people you love, you know, that you love them all the time. You don't remind them of it. You don't speak to them every day. So it's like when you're not in somebody's immediate orbit all the time, you kind of take it for granted. That's the good thing. I know we don't take that for granted that time. You know, and I appreciate y'all being in my corner and holding me down all the time and being there when I need it. And I hope I do the same for both of y'all and the rest of our inner circle, you know, in this life, man, because it does hit home, you know, that, you know, certain things in this life are simply not guaranteed. And to have another day to be able to talk about it and to be able to share like that, man, that's what makes this enjoyable for me. That's what makes me feel good, knowing the hard road ahead for his family and the families and everybody else involved, that we'll have great memories, great stories to share, and hopefully get a chance to share them for a long time to come. So I appreciate y'all taking some time this morning, man.
Absolutely, man. Love y'all fellas, man.
Yeah, man. No doubt.
We are inside.
Yeah. No question. Appreciate it. Thanks, man. Appreciate y'all. Once again, I need to make sure we thank Mark Spears of ESPN's The Undefeated and Michael Lee of The Athletic for taking some time out of what I know are busy days for them, as we all try and figure out how to deal in the aftermath of the loss of Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and 7 others in that helicopter crash in Calabasas, California. I appreciate you taking whatever time you did and enduring with us. And I promise you we'll be back. We'll be stronger, and we'll all keep in mind, you know, the contributions that have been made to this game and to everything else that we hold dear by Kobe Bryant. We'll be back right here next week on the Hang Time Podcast. The Hang Time Podcast.